Good morning, friends. This is Seetharam. So, we are going to talk about the part one auditing fundamentals of ASQ Certified Quality Auditor VOK. So, in this program, we will have the basic details of this particular auditing fundamentals and how to face the audit exam and how to get passed. Okay. These are the contents of this particular presentation where I'm going to explain about me as well as the overall overview of mentoring classes for this ASQ CQA and part one auditing fundamentals. These are the details about me. So in one session, the first session I already explained. For the easiness of others who are joining first time, I'm explaining here. As I explained in my last session, overview of mentoring classes for this ASQ CQA. These are the details like what, why, who, how, and where, as well as when. There is small change in my these mentoring classes calendar, considering my other priorities, professional as well as personal. And the next sessions would be in September, next November, then January, then March. And one can join the Google Hangout group so that updates can be taken up from that group. And in addition to that, one can refer my website, which is hyperlinked here in this presentation. And this video, as well as the PPT presentation PDF, are available in my website as well as in YouTube. Now, as we already covered in my first session about overview of ASQ CQA, so one can refer the earlier presentation here, which is hyperlinked. And the basics, we need to recap what exactly is this certified quality auditor. The certified quality auditor is a professional who understands the standards and principles of auditing and the auditing techniques of examining, questioning, evaluating, and reporting to determine a quality system's adequacy and deficiencies. Certified quality auditor analyzes all elements of a quality system and judges its degree of adherence to the criteria of industrial management and quality evaluation and control systems. The quality auditor certification brochure as well as body of knowledge have been hyperlinked here. One can refer this. Body of knowledge is divided into 5 different parts like auditing fundamentals, audit process, auditor competencies, audit program management and business applications, and quality tools and techniques. So, in this particular today's session, we are going to cover the first part, auditing fundamentals, which is comprising of 27 questions in the exam. So, let's get into the details of auditing fundamentals, which is having 5 different chapters. Those are types of quality audits, purpose and scope of audits, criteria to audit against, roles and responsibilities of audit participants, and professional conduct and consequences for auditors. Now, types of quality audits. This particular chapter is divided into 4 different subchapters. Those are method, auditor-auditee relationship, purpose, and common elements with other audits. First one, method. BOK has the elements of level of recognitions here, that is analyze, and the expectation from auditor is to define, differentiate, and analyze various audit types by method. Those are product, process, desk, department, function, element, system, management. Now, What is an audit? It is defined as systematic, independent and documented process for obtaining audit evidence and evaluating it objectively to determine the extent to which the audit criteria are fulfilled. So by the definition, we should be in a position to understand it should be systematic, it should be independent, and it should be a documented process to obtain audit evidence. And after getting that audit evidence, we need to evaluate against the audit criteria. At that extent of meeting audit criteria, we are going to identify. This process is called audit. So there are various types of audits. However, the discrete types of audits are three types. Product audit, sometimes it can be considered as service audit in this. Second one is process audit. Third one is system audit. Now, if you refer the particular Venn diagram here, product audit is an integral part of process audit. Process audit and product audit are integral part of system audit. When you conduct a system audit, it comprises of all these three types. Now there are other methods of audit we call as desk audit or document review, department of function or any particular section audit, and the same way management audit. Now the first method what we are going to talk is product audit. An examination of a particular product or service to evaluate whether it conforms to requirements. The requirements could be specifications, performance standards, and customer requirements. Now, this particular audit performed on a service is called service audit. So, a detailed inspection of a finished product performed prior to delivering the product to the customer. It is a test of both attribute as well as variable data. So in this particular product audit, results often provide information regarding the reliability and effectiveness of the overall quality system. We need to understand when should we conduct these product audits. Usually, these audits accomplish for one or more of the following reasons, like to estimate the outgoing quality level of the product or group of products, to ascertain if the outgoing product meets the predetermined standard level of quality for a product or product line, to estimate the level of quality originally submitted for inspection, to measure the ability of the quality control inspection function to make quality decisions, and to determine the suitability of internal process controls. Now, the another type of audit is process audit. Here, where the system audit is general in nature, the process audit is much more narrowly defined. Unlike the system audit, the process audit is an inch wide but a mile deep. So here we need to understand process audit is nothing but a vertical audit. It involves around verification of the manner in which people, material, machines, etc. mesh together to produce a product. Process audits are appraisal and analytical in nature. In appraisal mode, certain questions as an auditor we need to ask, like, are personnel involved in the production process performing in accordance with company manufacturing process plans, procedures, work instructions, workmanship standards, etc. Whereas in analytical mode, are procedures, work instructions, and so forth used in support of processes being audited helpful or judgmental, thorough or sketchy? Thus, duplication of effort exists between sub-functions. So in simple, the appraisal mode talks about the compliance of the procedures, whereas Analytical mode talks about the adequacy part of the system. Now the third one, system audit. An audit conducted on a management system to verify that applicable elements of the system are appropriate and effective and have been developed, documented, implemented in accordance and in conjunction with specified requirements. So that is called a system audit. System audit addresses the who, what, where, when, and how of the system used to produce its product. Think of the system audit in terms of an inch deep but a mile wide. That is nothing but a horizontal audit where we cover multiple areas, multiple processes, multiple products, but the deep diving would not be there. Here the mile wide we cover, broad and general in nature rather than narrow and limited in scope. So other than these discrete three types of audits, some audits like desk audit or document review. So let's understand about this desk audit or document review. A desk audit or document review is an audit of an organization's documents. Means the title itself is self-explanatory. We need to review the documents. This can be at a desk since people are not interviewed and activities are not observed. This must be conducted prior to process or system audit. So many times we conduct this desk audit before conducting any process or system audit. Findings help ensure that audit program resources are used efficiently. So the preliminary review will help us to plan next level of audits. The resources can be assessed properly and deployed properly. The same way this may be conducted periodically or when changes occur to verify the adequacy. Sometimes when a supplier is initially qualified, audited, and if he does any changes for that assessment of the new changes, we may conduct this type of desk audit. So that's about the first part. Now, second is auditor-auditee relationship. In this subchapter, define, differentiate, and analyze various audit types by auditor-auditee relationship like first party audit, second party audit, third party audit, and internal and external. So various classification we are going to talk about. Now, classification of audits. The brief classification is divided into three levels, and before that, internal audit and external audit. Now, within internal audit, there is uh, one section that is called as first party audit, and external audits are divided into two types. Those are second party audit and third party audit. Now, in general, the first party audit is called as internal audit. Second party audit. So this second party audit, which is external in nature, is conducted by parties having an interest in the organization, such as customers or by other persons on their behalf. So in general, second party audit is conducted by some customers. So supplier audit and such type of audits are called as second party audit. Now third party audit, in general, this is conducted by independent auditing organizations such as regulators or those providing certifications. Now, first party audit, which is internal audit. This is performed within an organization to measure its strengths and weaknesses against own procedures, against external standards adopted by which are voluntary or imposed, those are mandatory by the organization. This audit is conducted by auditors who are employed by organization but have no vested interest in the audit area to maintain independence. Any audit, it is crucial part to maintain the independence of auditor. In many cases, Independence can be demonstrated by the freedom from responsibility for the activity being audited or freedom from bias and conflict of interest. Companies may have separate audit group or hire an audit organization to conduct this first party audit. Second party audit. External audit performed on a supplier by a customer or by a contracted organization on behalf of customer. These audits are subject to the rules of contract law as they are providing contractual direction from customer to supplier. More formal than first party audit because these audit results sorry, could influence customers' purchasing decisions. A survey, sometimes called an assessment or examination, is a comprehensive evaluation that analyzes facilities, resources, economic stability, technical ability, personnel, production capabilities and performance, as well as entire management system. So sometimes this second party audit may have a survey, which is also called as an assessment. Now, the important classification is the third party auditor. Third party audit where auditor performs. The auditor is from an audit organization independent of customer supplier relationship and free of any conflict. On behalf of auditees potential customers who cannot afford to survey or audit external organizations themselves, who consider third party audit to be more cost effective alternative, mandatory audits on regulated industries by government representatives to provide assurance of safety of public. So this particular audit here is the independence is key component of third party audit, and this third party audit may result in certification, registration, recognition, award, license approval, citation, and sometimes fine or penalty. So in this particular third party audit, we may have some examples like certification body for ISO certification. They conduct audit in a facility. It is a third party audit here. And the same way regulatory inspections like USFDA inspection or MHRA or any other regulatory agency. So those come under third party audit. So end result is with either certification, registration or approvals. Sorry. So in this particular third party audit, compliance would be verified, checked and against the regulatory norms. Now we need to understand the difference between audit and inspection. Inspection is a tool to detect errors or defects before a product is approved for release or distribution. Normally part of manufacturing process, may form quality control department to manage and conduct inspection. Whereas some audits conducted by government like USFDA, MHRA are described as inspection in regulatory documents. So we need to understand audit is conducted by an internal people or external consulting authority or customer. Those are called as audits. If a third party audit is conducted by any regulatory agency, that audit is called as inspection. Now, the third subchapter is purpose. In this particular section, the expectation from auditor is to define, differentiate, and analyze various audit types by purpose. Verification of corrective action, follow-up audits, risk audits, accreditation and compliance audits, surveillance and forecast audits. Now in this, any audit when we want to do the purpose, also common to refer an audit according to its purpose or objectives. An auditor may specialize in types of audits based on audit purpose, such as to verify compliance, conformance, or performance. Some audits have special administrative purpose, such as auditing documents, risk, performance, follow-up on completed corrective actions. So let's understand one by one the certification purposes. Companies in certain high-risk categories such as toys, pressure vessels, medical devices, pharmaceuticals wanting to do business in Europe must comply with conformate European mark, that is CE mark requirements. One way to comply is to have management systems certified by third-party organizations to management system requirement criteria such as ISO 9001. Customer may require suppliers to conform to standards like ISO 14001. Third-party audits for system certification should be performed by organizations evaluated and accredited by an established accreditation board such as ANSI ASQ National Accreditation Board. So, certification versus registration versus accreditation. So, in general, the terms certification and registration are used interchangeably to refer to verifying the conformance of organizations' management systems to a standard or other requirements. So, certification also refers to the process of validating and verifying the credentials of individuals such as auditors. So that is the difference between the certificate and certification, what we discussed in our earlier section. In this context, the certification may give to an auditor. The same way, now the term accreditation is used when validating or verifying the conformance of a certification body to requirements of national and or international. Certification body, also known as registrar, is a third-party company contracted to evaluate the conformance of organization's management system to the requirements of appropriate standard and issue a certificate of conformance when warranted. So, for example, when your site is to be certified for ISO 9001 requirements, the certification body comes to your site to conduct audit and they award you the certificate, whereas that certification body has to be certified by an accredited board. So that certification body also went through those audits. So in that situation, accreditation is given to that particular certification body. So those are the key differences between certification, registration, and accreditation. Now, another type is performance versus compliance or conformance audits. Various authors use the terms to describe an audit purpose beyond compliance and conformance. Value added assessments like management audits, added value auditing, continual improvement assessment means these are beyond compliance, beyond the needed requirements. The key difference is collection of audit evidence. All types of audits can include a purpose to identify and report performance observations. Audits with this objective are more likely to be first party, process, system. However, other types of audits may also include these performance oriented audits. Those are beyond compliance or conformance audits. Now, another category is follow-up audit. Since many corrective actions cannot be performed at the time of the audit, may require follow-up audit to verify corrective action and sometimes preventive action as an opportunity for improvement of performance. Normally, this is combined with next scheduled audit. However, this decision depends on importance and risk of the finding. This may forward identified performance issues to management for follow-up. So this is called a follow-up audit. Now we are at fourth subchapter, common elements with other audits. Expectation is to identify elements such as audit, audit purpose, data gathering techniques, tracing, etc. that quality audits have in common with other audits like environmental, safety, financial, and other types of audits. So in this, expectation from auditor is to apply the knowledge and skill what he is carrying out. Common elements with other audits. Regardless of the scope of a system or process audit, all audits have common elements. Audits can address almost any topic of interest where activities are outputs result from defined plans. So friends, we need to understand the key thing here is a situation where a planning is needed and an output is expected and there is an interest. So in that situation, we can have audit. Basically, if activity or status is subject to planning or reporting, it can be audited. That's the thumb rule for an audit to happen. Like product or service quality, environmental, marketing or promotional claims, financial reserves and statements, health and safety conditions, equal opportunity compliance, Sarbanes-Oxley, etc. So all these situations an audit can happen. Audit like inquiries that do not fulfill all technical requirements of audit, such as audit plan or avoiding conflicts of interest, are known as evaluation or assessment. So this is not called as an audit, and these are fairly subjective audit-like activities. These evaluations are nothing but judgments, whereas assessments are estimates or determinations of significance or importance. Common type of assessment is statutory and regulatory compliance audit, where auditors need to be careful, avoid going beyond their competence in reporting. Interpretation of laws is often required and can be viewed as domain of lawyers who are members of the bar. Now, key concept here is we need to understand audits are nothing but processes. So what is audit process? Any process means which has input to get output. That activity is called a process. Now, for audit process, inputs are competent auditors, authorizing support to client, cooperative auditees, defined audit plans and procedures, purpose and scope of the audit, reference documents, administrative and infrastructure support. So with these inputs, along with planned sequence of audit activities, we can achieve outputs like accumulated data that are transformed into useful, actionable information, presenting formal report to client and auditee, follow-up of CAPA implementation to support improvement and mutual benefit. So the key thing here is improvement and mutual benefit. That's what the bottom line of any audit. And the same as some other common audit elements like purpose and scope, document review, preparation for review, on-site or remote data collection, formal audit report, audit follow-up. These are the common elements across all types of audits that may be quality, environmental, safety, financial, or any others. So, under auditing fundamentals, the first part that is or types of audits be completed. So now the next item would be purpose and scopes of audit. So before going to that, I need to take any questions or feedback so far. Uh, Chandra, do you have any questions so far, or shall we proceed to next chapter?
You can proceed, Seetharam.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any questions till now.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, purpose and scope of audits. In this particular section, we have two types, two subchapters. Those are elements of purpose and scope and benefits of audits. Elements of purpose and scope. Expectation from auditor is to describe and determine how the purpose of an audit can affect its scope. Audit purpose. Client's responsibility to determine the purpose statement. Regular audits, well defined and well known by all parties. Whereas first party audit is to assure management that audited area is in compliance with particular standards and goals and objectives. Strategies of organization are being met to identify opportunities for improvement, to assess the progress of management system toward meeting the requirements of regulatory or standards, identify process efficiencies for delivery of product or service, to report organizational risk to management for evaluation. Now, process performance audit. This audit is to determine if the system design is adequate to achieve organization objective, to identify performance weaknesses and strengths, to verify process responsiveness to customer and organizational needs, to identify process risks and areas to be optimized. Another type of audit is risk-based audit. In this, to allocate resources specifically to areas that have been problematic or that are high risk and could include product characteristics, product or process hazards, personal or process safety, environmental controls. And second party audit, the purpose is to either assess the supplier to verify that the contract requirements are being followed or assess a potential supplier's capability of meeting specific requirements for a product or service. To get the confidence in the quality of goods and services being delivered, to identify the possible cause of recent nonconformities, to verify the supplier has an active environmental abatements and safety improvement program that meets customer requirements. And this audit program would be, the purpose would be determined by either audit program, engineering and technology, or purchasing departments. And once the purpose is identified, the communication to the auditee is responsibility of either of these functions. Now, for third party audit, the purpose performed by auditing organizations to determine the compliance or conformance of auditor's system with agreed upon criteria. In case of an audit for certification, an auditor examines auditor's systems for conformity with a specific standard or CGMP. In case of inspection performed for regulatory purposes, regulatory agency examines the compliance of the auditor's systems with regulations or laws. May have penalties associated with them like fine, sometimes jail or both. So very serious and focus to ensure that companies are protecting the environment, the public and their employees. Purpose we talked about. Now the next item is audit scope. According to ISO 19011, the audit scope is the extent and boundaries of an audit. Scope has been defined as the breadth of the audit and may specify areas not to be included in the audit. So this is the key thing we need to remember. Normally includes a description of physical locations, organizational units, product, system, processes, activities and processes, areas excluded from audit, applicable standards, contracts, regulations, codes and other legal documents. An important point is the time period covered, like last 2 years, last 3 years. So review period would be defined. Any changes in scope should be informed to participants and documented in audit plan. So that's about the first chapter, purpose and scope of audits. And the second subchapter here is the benefits of audits. Expectation from auditor is to analyze how audits can be used to provide an independent assessment of system effectiveness and efficiency, risk to the bottom line and other organizational measures. There are a lot of benefits of audits. Like audits can verify ongoing conformance to requirements and promote improvement of organization's effectiveness as well as efficiency. Management can utilize objective data to make informed decisions regarding achievement of organizational objectives. Verification of conformance to requirements, identification of risk and monitoring of risk treatments. This is key thing for any management. In the same way, other benefits include identification of opportunities for improvement, determination of readiness for new product or processes, verification of system effectiveness, identification of inefficiencies and ineffective controls within the system, verification of CAPA, identification and reporting of best practices, advancing the achievement of organizational objectives. So these are the various benefits of audits. In addition to that, management review should consider recurring non-conformities. Auditing starts to provide the information needed for the check part step in PDCA cycle, that is plan, do, check and act. So here the third element, the third step, check part, is audit in this context. So management is better prepared to move forward with more informed decisions. The universe of opportunities expands as new knowledge and theories are developed. System and process auditing can provide new knowledge if understood and properly applied. So, when we apply the PDCA cycle continuously, we have quality improvement. By the time, that's where we achieve continuous improvement. So, in this PDCA cycle, the step check is here auditing process. That's how we derive the fruits of audits, the benefits of audits. Now, we are at the third section, criteria to audit against. In this section, auditor is to define and distinguish between various audit criteria such as external standards, contracts, specifications, quality awards, policies, internal quality management system, sustainability, social responsibility, etc. The level of cognition here is analysis. This auditor is expected to analyze the situation and the relationship between the breakdown items. Audit criteria. Many times we use this term. What exactly is this? That's going to be a universal term that describes the reference used by an auditor against which the evidence collected during the audit can be compared. So here audit criteria is what is expected, what are requirements, so that we can compare the evidence what we collect during audit. ISO 19011 clause 3.2 states that criteria are set of policies, procedures or requirements used as a reference against which audit evidence is compared. ISO 9000 vocabulary standard explains that requirements may be generated by various stakeholders or interested parties. Requirements may be specified or they may be generally implied, such as customs or common practice. So the key thing to be noted here is not all requirements can be specified. That's every auditor as well as auditee have to understand. The criteria may be referred to as a system or process requirements, rules that the auditee follows, or a specific named standard or regulation. Assigned auditors must be knowledgeable of the audit criteria, document, or standard that the organization is being evaluated against. Competent, and part of that competency is knowledgeable of the audit criteria and their interpretations. Sometimes we may go for audit and we expect, for example, in the intermediate manufacturing, pharmaceutical intermediate manufacturing, where we expect a CGMP. Sometimes they don't have to follow ICH-Q7 rules over there. So we need to understand what is the audit criteria over there, like if they have any quality system like ISO 9001, auditor has to assess the system against such quality system what they have or such management system what they follow. So the important point here is the knowledge on the criteria against which auditor has to assess the facility or the system. Audit requirements. Audits of programs such as quality or environmental programs normally require reference standard against which to judge the adequacy of plans, and these may include national and international standards, customer and corporate specifications, contract and customer requirements, local and national statutes and regulations, industry codes and standards, guides, handbooks, and so on. These are various reference standards which are to be used during audit as requirement. Now, there are some performance standards. These documents that contain the norms of criteria against which an activity is measured. These performance standards are divided into 4 levels. First one is policies, where we can find corporate policies, quality system standards, regulatory standards, business sector standards, like that could be pharmaceutical related, medical device, or airspace, or aviation standards, automobile standards, etc. Second level are manuals. These are corporate manuals, client manuals, function or department manuals, or division manuals. Third level are procedural documents. These are nothing but step-by-step requirements for doing an activity or a job. Sometimes we may consider as work instructions. And fourth is detailed documents such as drawings, purchase orders, specifications, and inspection plan, specific instructions to carry out an activity or a process or a particular operation. These are performance standards. Now, audit basis. Audit basis has 5 different things to note down. Those are management system, product or process standard. That could be ISO 9001 or ISO 14001, etc. Second level would be the contracts, means reference to specific standard like ANSI or ASTM. Third would be specifications of product or services. Fourth, organizational policies and objectives. And fifth, laws and regulations. So these things would be the basis for conducting an audit. So in case there are no criteria to compare with, then the investigation may be called a survey or review. We cannot call as an audit. Now, the chapter D, roles and responsibilities of audit participants. In this chapter, the expectation from auditor is to define and describe the functions and responsibilities of various audit participants, including audit team members, lead auditor, client, auditee, etc. Let's get into the deep. Various roles, various audit participants like audit client, auditor, lead auditor, auditee, and audit program manager. Who is audit client? In general, organization or person requesting an audit. Who is auditor? The person who conducts audit. Then lead auditor. Auditor responsible for managing the audit. Auditee is organization being audited. And within this auditee group, an escort. Escort is a person assigned to escort the audit team members. A coordinator. This coordinator is a person in contact with the lead auditor or the audit program manager in order to manage for the audit. So audit group may have subparts like escorts and coordinators. And finally, audit program manager. This is the person responsible for the audit program within an organization or within a facility or setup. So these people could be audit participants. Now, let's understand various situations where we can identify who would be client, who would be auditing, and who would be auditor or auditing organization. Here, the first case is external audit, where the situation is organization desires recognition or approval of its capability to meet standard like ISO 9001. So with this purpose, here the client is top management of organization desiring certification or registration. Auditee here is the same organization desiring certification or registration. Whereas auditing organization is the organization granting certification or registration using an auditor employed by the auditing organization or hired to conduct the audit. This particular organization is a certification body. Now, second situation for external audit where customer organization desires to evaluate a supplier. So again, this is a second party audit. In this situation, the client is the interested purchasing agent, purchasing manager or engineering. Auditee is the potential or existing supplier, and the auditing organization is nothing but the member of the customer organization staff or auditors under contract to customer organization. Now, another situation where the external audit regulatory organization verifies that supplier or operator is in compliance with requirements. So this is a third party audit. In the situation, the client is regulatory agency, auditee is the potential supplier or operator, and auditing organization are employee of the regulatory agency or auditors under contract to the agency. And the fourth situation where a first party audit, that is internal audit, here organization desires to determine the degree of conformity of its own organization elements to a predetermined management system. So in this situation, the client is nothing but upper management team of the organization desiring to use auditing as a management tool. Auditor could be the department or function of the organizations to be evaluated. Whereas auditing organization is employee of the organization or individuals hired to conduct audit. So these are the various situations where the roles of client, auditee, auditing organization could be played in different situations. So roles and responsibilities of client. So there are a lot of items as responsibilities of client. Basically, client determines the need for an audit and he identifies the audit organization to be used, determines the audit purpose, overall audit scope, and may confer with audit program manager or lead auditor to define specifics, addresses resources like budget issues and all those things, audit team leader or delegate the responsibility to the audit program manager. He may choose to attend audit process meetings such as exit meeting, receives the audit report, determines and directs the distribution of audit report, and he determines the need for follow-up actions, and he supports the audit initiative, and he follows organizational procedures regarding the audit process. These are brief responsibilities of a client. Now, responsibilities of auditor. Auditor understands the purpose and scope of the audit, understands the audit criteria being audited against, prepares for the audit and performs the audit, records the results of the investigation, probably through a checklist, attends the opening and exit meetings, reports findings to the lead auditor, verifies the correction of previous nonconformities if directed to do so, provides input to the formal report if directed to do so by the lead auditor or client, maintains confidentiality of the audit information, this is crucial thing, reports conflicts of interest to the lead auditor, and this auditor is ethical and adheres to an organization code of conduct or the principles of auditing as listed in ISO 19011. Responsibilities of lead auditor or audit team leader is responsible for communication with the client, auditor, auditor program management, and auditee representative, provides audit team selection input if requested to do so, communicates audit plan and requirements to auditee. He ensures that necessary resources are available to audit team. The team has appropriate working papers, plans the audit and directs the audit team, conducts audit process meetings, prepares audit report, manages the audit process and involves conflicts of interest or other personal issues. This is the key thing, key difference of an auditor and a lead auditor. And he ensures reports and records are properly filed and safeguarded. Now, responsibilities of auditee. Auditee coordinates with the lead auditor, informs employees of the pending audit purpose and scope, addresses logistical issues with the lead auditor, provides adequate space and privacy for the opening and exit meetings, attends the opening and exit meetings, provides area for auditors to work and meet, cooperates with the auditors, provide access to areas which are included in the audit scope, acknowledges audit results, takes corrective actions on findings of audit. And overall, audit program manager, he assigns auditors to schedule audits, ensures availability of resources, budgeting and all other things, establishes a reporting relationship that ensures objective and impartial audits. He qualifies auditors considering knowledge, experience, and skills, establishes controls for an effective and efficient audit program through procedures, plans, objectives, etc. He creates, distributes, and maintains audit program schedules, reports audit program process to management, that's the key thing here, monitors auditor performance, determines audit program objectives, and creates plans to accomplish the objectives. He keeps and safeguards audit program information, promotes ethical behavior or on the part of the auditors and those involved in managing the audit program. So that's how the responsibilities of various parties involved in audit as audit participants we discussed about. Now we covered up to A, B, C, and D. Any questions so far? Participants, any questions? Okay, thank you, Chandra, for your answer. Let's go to the fifth chapter, that is professional conduct and consequences for auditors. This is the key thing any auditor has to know and practice. Under this professional conduct and consequences for auditors, there are three sub chapters: professional conduct and responsibilities, legal consequences, audit credibility. The first one, professional conduct and responsibilities. Expectation from an auditor is to define and apply ASQ code of conduct, concepts of due diligence and due care with respect to confidentiality and conflict of interest, and appropriate actions in response to the discovery of illegal activities or unsafe conditions. Here, the expectation from the student is to apply the knowledge and skills what we learned through the exam questions. So, ASQ code of ethics. So, any ASQ member or ASQ person who got certification has to follow this code of ethics on fundamental principles, relations with the public, relations with employees, customers, and clients, and with peers. Further, the Institute of Internal Auditors, they have code of ethics and it is captured. They have mainly the elements like integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, competency. Under these rules of conduct for these four categories explained here, any auditor has to practice this code of ethics strictly. When situations where we may face conflicts of interest, so in the situation, how to deal? So, conflicts of interest situations sometimes encountered prior to and during audits include. So, let's understand what could be various conflicts of interest, like previous employment of the auditor by the auditee or a major competitor of the auditee, regardless of the reason for separation. Holding of significant amounts of stocks or bonds in the auditee's business or that of major competitor. Previous or current close working relationship with the organization. Prior involvement by the auditor in developing the quality program or procedures used by the group being audited. Close relationships with the group being audited. Any offer by auditee of money, goods, or services in the nature of a bribe, kickback, or secret commission. Acceptance of gift, that could be money, gratuity, or other thing of value with more than a nominal value, or involvement in auditee sponsored sales, promotions, or other activities that may represent or be constructed as a conflict of interest. Performance of outside work for the auditee that might adversely affect the auditor's performance or judgment on the job. These are various examples of conflicts of interest. So, when a conflict of interest exists as an auditor, how do we deal? Here, the expectation is the auditor must relay this information to audit program management or decline to conduct the audit, whichever is more appropriate. If you are an auditor, then you will inform to a lead auditor or audit program management. If you are audit program manager, then you may take decision to decline to conduct the audit. Actions that management and audit team leader can take include ensuring that sufficient time has passed to eliminate the conflict, assigning a different auditor to cover the specific area of conflict, and sometimes removing the audit or audit team leader from the team. These could be various solutions to handle the subjective situation. Under professional conduct and responsibilities, the key thing here is confidentiality. Auditor must maintain confidentiality but not to the point of performing an inadequate audit. We need to understand this line. Each auditor needs to be prepared to sign agreement or utilize techniques for walking around a proprietary area. Sometimes a proprietary area is prohibited for external people. In the situation, an auditor may ask you to sign up an agreement, and auditors normally are not authorized to obligate their organizations. So, auditor has to understand clearly the content of this agreement, the implications, and he may require support from his lead auditor or audit program manager, and sometimes the legal section of the organization. So before signing off this agreement, auditor has to evaluate completely, and he cannot authorize to obligate their own organizations. So another important under confidentiality is the conduct. Proprietary information should never divulge in a sharing situation with other auditors. Sometimes auditor may discuss about the audit observations within a situation with other auditors, which is not to be done. Even sometimes the body language could disclose proprietary information, like when a question comes from another auditor, and the body language, like the movements of shoulders, the face expressions, which are non-verbal communications. So that body language also to be controlled to maintain a professional conduct. There are certain techniques where a confidential information is there. Like when auditing in an undisclosed area, auditor can rely on memory and not write audit notes. And another technique, like auditor must respect the auditee's wishes and audit around the undisclosed area. The same way, auditor can remove personnel from undisclosed area for interview. So to interview, he can collect the evidence objectively, and he may ask auditee to certify that the procedure does exist and covers the relevant process. Security. The key thing here is companies in certain highly sensitive industries like defense or other areas may require that auditors have or obtain security clearances. In fact, in our pharmaceutical industry, when auditor comes into the facility, he has to undergo certain security frisking or checking process. Sometimes he may not enter into certain areas. In that situation, alternatively, auditor can be constantly escorted by the auditee group. The same with trust, another important point. Auditors are expected to exercise due care while performing activities. Trust is the key thing. Okay, so in case when we discover any illegal or unsafe conditions or activities during audit, how do we deal as an auditor? So in that situation, if you observe any unsafe activities, auditor must not ignore it. The key thing here is and sorry, internal audit situation where he has to immediately inform an auditee representative and audit team leader who will inform auditee manager in turn. Whereas in the case of external audit, auditor must immediately inform the auditee and create a record of the situation. This is the key difference between internal audit and external audit. In external audit, this record is mandate. If anyone of audit team is endangered, the audit must be stopped and auditors return to a safe area. This is the key activity or the direction when situation happens which are unsafe. So auditor has to practice these directions. And when we discover any illegal situations or unethical activities, when we detect, so in that situations, auditor has ethical duty to bring the matter to the attention of the client and appropriate management for actions. Keep a record of such matters, safeguard the evidence, and obtain copies of pertinent components and records, documents. He should be aware of their legal responsibilities and rights under the law, including whistleblower laws. And he has to verify and inform the audit team leader, who will inform the auditee and our client further. Another important element under professional conduct and responsibilities is social and cultural conditions. In growing economical conditions, globalization, auditor must be familiar with the local customs so that potentially unethical situations can be interpreted correctly and responded to appropriately. The auditor's awareness and Willingness to work with different cultures will help avoid misunderstandings and ensure the effectiveness of the audit. For example, in US, any auditor is not expected to receive any gift from the auditing. It's a mandate. Whereas in some countries, small gifts are allowed. So, auditor has to study the situation, the cultural conditions, considerations within the area where he is going to audit, and according to that, he has to exercise the best practices. So the awareness on these social and cultural considerations, dimensions, is the key thing as part of professional conduct. And a few other elements like language and literacy barriers, the same way, internal conflicts of interest. So let's talk about language and literacy barriers. Audit personnel must either be fluent in the language in which the audit is to be conducted or have the support of technical expert with the necessary technical language skills. So auditor may need to ask extremely simple questions to overcome a lack of language skills. Sometimes when we go to a place where English may not be a common language, for example in China, so there we have to have an authorized translator, a technical expert. He will support us during the communications. And in certain situations, if at all, auditor needs to interview the person, so auditor has to ensure to ask extremely simple questions so that the lack of language skills or literacy barriers could be overcome. The same way, avoiding internal conflicts of interest problems. So these situations like auditor will not be assigned to audit an area of previous employment. So through these techniques, the internal conflict of interest can be eliminated, and auditor must maintain confidentiality. It's a professional conduct and responsibility is key element. Now, the second chapter is legal consequences. Expectation from auditor is to identify potential legal and financial ramifications of improper auditor actions, carelessness, negligence, etc. in various situations and anticipate the effect that certain audit results can have on an auditee's liability. So under legal consequences, the liability, personal as well as corporate liability. Each company and each auditor accepts liability for the decisions made regarding whether to grant certification or registration. Court of law would be called in for the final decision. If an auditor provides guidance, even if the guidance fixes the problem, the auditor still owns the solution. If the recommended solution is not the best, there may be malicious compliance that will reflect back on the auditor. That's the reason we might have observed many cases where auditor gives observations but he doesn't give a solution because this is the reason he has the liability. So if he gives the solution and the solution creates further problems, he has to own. So that could be the reason, many times we wonder why auditors are giving only observations and they're not giving the solutions. But when we understand this point, then we don't probably, misunderstand any auditor. Registrar or certification organizations and their auditors face a special liability during the audit and after registration and certification, like regulatory inspectors or any certification bodies. Audit record disclosure. So, audit records must be treated as confidential information and should not be disclosed to internal or outside entities without proper approval of the client and audit. Copies of audit report must be sent to client and or client. So third section here we are going to talk about audit credibility. Expectation from auditor is to identify and apply various factors that influence audit credibility, such as auditor independence, objectivity, and qualifications. Auditor conduct. Professionalism is defined as the aims and qualities that characterize a profession or a professional person. So expectation from every auditor is to be professional. General standards of internal auditing. The standards would include like independence, professional proficiency, scope of work, performance of audit work, management of the internal auditing department. So these standards have to be followed by each and every auditor. Now, when we communicate with auditee, how should we behave? For that, auditor's temperament is often the key to a successful audit. We need to remember this. Auditor should find an acceptable balance between the situations like becoming more friendly to the auditee or becoming very rude to the auditee. So the balance has to be maintained by an auditor during audit. An auditor can establish good rapport with an auditee early in the audit by being respectful, courteous, and appreciative of any special arrangements made for auditor's comfort and convenience. Maintaining open communication channels throughout an audit is essential. This is the key part. Auditor should avoid naming names and should emphasize the purpose of the assessment of the product, process, or system. For audits that represent a high risk of false claims or when auditor feels uncomfortable, a second person check should be scheduled to work with the auditor or using a recording device. Escort should be present to witness interview. So one of my experience with Ukraine regulatory inspectors, when they conclude their exit meeting inspection outcome, they were carrying a recording device and they recorded all the conversation what we had, and that's part of their protocol. So sometimes such recording devices may be used so that we can have objective evidence. Now, audit ethics. To have audit credibility, ISO 19011 contains 6 principles of auditing that are prerequisites for providing audit conclusions that are relevant and sufficient for enabling auditors working independently from one another to reach similar conclusions in similar circumstances. So these are the principles which are to be followed by each and every auditor. Let's understand what are those, like integrity, fair presentation is of course, due professional care, it has to be taken, confidentiality of the information auditor has to maintain, independence, auditor has to have independence to conduct the audit, evidence based approach. This is the key thing, friends. Whatever we conduct audit, it should be evidence based approach. Whatever the decisions or findings we derive from the audit, it should be evidence based. So these are 6 different principles to conduct audit, and these principles have to be followed by each and every auditor. Now, audit function credibility. Credible audit is nothing but a meaningful audit. Like we were talking about improvement as well as mutual benefit. When we achieve that, it shows we have a credible audit. We have a meaningful audit. Competent individuals who gather and handle all information pertaining to the audit in an unbiased and ethical manner provide a credible audit. Here the key things are unbiased and ethical manner. Using a knowledgeable, experienced, skilled, capable and well-trained auditor is the most effective way to enhance the credibility of the audit function. A good auditor does not have to be an expert in the area being audited, but auditor does need to be knowledgeable in the discipline of auditing. So let's understand this point. Auditor does not have to be an expert in the area being audited, but instead he has to be having knowledge in the discipline of auditing. So he should be aware of the principles of audit. He should be aware of the ethical part of auditing, and he should have the competencies to conduct an audit, and he should be able to communicate effectively both orally as well as in writing. And interviewing, it's a skill basically. During interview, auditor has to ask intelligent, proper questions and listen carefully. So auditor should not ask leading questions. So with this, the 5 chapters which are part of section 1, auditing fundamentals, be covered. And now let's go to counseling part, where we can have certain questions. If you have any questions here. So now ball is to the audience. Friends, any questions? Chandra, do you have any questions so far?
Hi.
Yeah.
I just asked 2 questions in the chat box.
Okay, just a moment. I'll open that. Okay. Your first question is, when there are multiple auditors during an audit, can an interaction between them during audit in foreign language is an issue? Okay, that's a good question. See, many times what will happen, the key thing for conducting a meaningful audit, credible audit, is the confidentiality and the conduct of an auditor. Here the communication is the key part. The moment when we are in the, let's examine, imagine we are in an audit room where auditees as well as auditors are there. The moment when auditors talk in their own language, it gives a suspicion or a suspect situations where auditee may feel that they are talking about the auditee, a situation which is not intended by an auditee. So to avoid such type of misunderstandings, the good practice or the best practice is to talk in a language which is understandable to auditee as well as auditors. So there is no mandate, but however, the best practice is to talk in a language which is easy to understand to all the people. So that's about my answer on your first question.
And I just wanted to ask one more thing related to this. In most of the regulatory audits which are from the foreign countries where English is not the language of communication, we face this issue generally.
Yeah.
So for the example you took Ukraine, they generally don't speak in English. They just try to communicate as much as in simple language which they can speak.
Yeah.
So most of the cases, even in the vice versa, the auditees will be speaking in some other language which they can't understand. So will that give a conflict or anything?
As such, this is not a conflict, but however, we have to give confidence mutually to other parties. So the moment auditors speak in their own languages, it may give uncomfort situation to auditee and vice versa. So the best
Yes.
practice is to have a language which is understandable to all the parties. But however, if at all we want to talk in the own language, we need to ensure we are talking other than the key things, or some confidential things we are talking. For example, some situations like regulatory inspection, they may talk internally in their own language about the outcome of audit or inspection, or the classification level, risk levels, they may talk. So one has to, the bottom line here is very simple. Anybody has to understand, if somebody is talking in their own language, ultimately they will conclude in the language which is easy to me to understand. So till that, we have to have patience. That's the key thing here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about the first one. And second one, you
Yes.
mentioned about conflict while not accepting an issues identified. Okay, so like
So
as an
NQs are
auditor,
clarified, yeah.
you have concluded some observation, whereas auditee is not
Hmm.
accepting. That's what you want to convey, the situation?
Yeah, it's like that, and they even argue a lot of times.
Okay, so
So how do you generally handle it?
generally it happens in many situations. That's the reason we have various responsibilities. If you identify the responsibilities of auditee, auditor, lead auditor, client, and audit program manager, as an auditor, when I'm going to explain the audit observations to an auditee, first point I need to check, I should have proper evidence. With evidence based
Yes,
approach I maintain, and
approach.
with that evidence I should be able to convince the auditee. But of course, some situations auditee may not be in a position to get convinced. Then I have to take support of my lead auditor. That's the first action. So lead auditor
Okay.
will try to communicate to the auditee, and in case
Hmm.
he also has the same situation, your same problems, then his responsibility to communicate to client and audit program manager. In turn, they will take a final call. But the bottom line is very simple. As an auditor, we should know when to stop our discussion. Means we
Okay.
should not get into an argument situations where mutual benefits are damaged or conflicts of interest developed. So that is how auditor has to maintain the professional conduct, and the like the six principles of our ISO 19011, like fair presentation,
Yes.
evidence based approach, integrity. So when we maintain these principles, automatically we will come to a situation where the mutual agreement would happen, and that skill has to be taught through proper training by a lead auditor or
Okay.
audit program manager. That's how the situation.
Yeah.
Any other questions you
We
have?
come across no,
Yeah.
this is just like elaboration of this. We just come across this type of issues preferably during the internal audits, the first level, first type of audit. So
Okay.
that's the reason I'm just asking.
That's why, when I faced in my past, whenever somebody is explaining the audit observation, the auditee was
Hmm.
not ready to take. So then what we did,
Yes.
we called our lead auditor as well as audit program manager in the exit meeting, and we called the client
Okay.
also. So
Yes.
when we try to explain the situation with the proper evidence and the risk which is carried out due to this observation, if auditee is not ready to understand, then client was able to understand, because the client has the purpose, client has the broader purpose.
Yes.
So that's how we handle the situation, so that the mutual benefit occurred finally at the end of the situation. That's how we managed.
Okay.
Yeah. So any
That's
other
it.
questions?
Thank you. No.
Okay, so uh, with this, we just concluded the section what we had. I love to have this Deming's words. Like it would be better if everyone would work together as a system. The aim for everybody to win. So that's what the bottom line of audit is, to have improvement as well as mutual benefit. When we practice the Deming words, we will definitely get the result. So that's it, to friends. This video would be captured and kept in YouTube and other areas. The PPT would be shared with all the users, and we will meet for our next session, which is going to happen in September. So Chandra, I need to take your feedback. How was the session, and any improvements you want to suggest?
Okay. You want it through mail or you want it's like a
You
survey or
can brief me
through?
now. You can brief me now, so that.
Uh, uh, I felt a bit of more examples. We should took like an example of Ukraine or something like that would have been more better. That's it. Otherwise, the whole presentation and the communication was really good.
Yeah. So
Situation-based examples are what I'm suggesting.
okay, sure, definitely. I will add. And the content was useful and meaningful.
Yes. Yes. The whole presentation with concepts are really good.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Uh, right then, so it's really nice to have the presentation and the discussion with you. Uh,
Yeah.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so
Same.
much. Have a nice time. Bye.
Yeah.